Hi, my name is Sophie Summers and welcome to the Crossdressing Lifestyle channel. And in today's video we're going to be having a look at that very important issue called deportment and how we can get more of a feminine appearance and therefore increase our confidence when we dress. Now, in order for me to be able to sort of get the information across, I've decided to split the whole video into 4 various sections. Starting off with posture. It's the most important thing, and there are 3 key elements I'm going to be covering, and that's to do with your head and chin, your stomach or your tummy, and then your shoulder placement. And from there we're going to be moving on to how we can walk in heels, and also sort of different technique we would use for walking in flat shoes. The next thing we want to have a little look at is how we stand. Standing with confidence and standing in more of a feminine way. And finally, we're going to finish with 3 techniques we can use when we actually sit down and make us look more elegant and more graceful. So if you want to find out more about each and every one of those elements, please do join me after the intro. So welcome back. Now in this section we're going to be looking at the very important elements of posture. Now I'm sure each and every one of us can think of some iconic women that once we see them they seem to glide on air. When they walk into a room they ooze confidence, and it's a bit like watching a ballerina or a ballroom dancer sort of entice you and sort of mesmerize you. And a lot of that actually comes from having very good posture. So what I want to do is to just focus on 3 simple but key areas to break down that more manly posture that we all adopt to a more feminine and softer posture. So the 3 elements are to do with our chin. Now what I mean by that is, how we place our head and control our head movement. So we want to really place our chins so they are parallel to the floor. If we hold it up like this, it gives that element of sort of snobbery and arrogance, which is not what we want to, image we want to give across. Now if we're looking down like this, we often stumble and give a sort of less of a confident issue. So the first thing we need to do is to, if I turn sideways, and that's just to get your chin parallel to the floor. So that's a simple one we need to have a look at. So bear in mind that we try and get our chin parallel to the floor. The second element is our tummy. Now what we need to do to make and elongate ourselves is to draw in our tummy. So if we draw in our tummy, it pushes our arch of our back and makes us sort of stand upright a little bit more. So I always find that wearing high-waisted trousers or jeans helps me to control my tummy area here and always keep it sort of in when I'm walking or when I'm standing in particular. That's why we want to pay a lot of attention when we're walking and standing. We can relax a little bit when we sit down, but it's nice to get into the habit of literally sucking your tummy in. So as we suck our tummy in, our chest actually gets a little bit more ample when it goes forward and our back goes back, which gives us a little bit of a better posture. And thirdly, and probably the most useful little tip, is our shoulders. Now, you often see when you're looking at deportment issues about keeping your shoulders back. Now, when people put them back, they generally sort of put them back like this, and it's a hunched sort of look, and it looks all wrong. So a simple little exercise to get a nice position is we want them back, but we also want them down. So what I do is I roll my shoulders a couple of times, 1, 2, and on the 3rd one, when I get to the top, I really want to force them down. And that gives me where my shoulders should actually be. I don't want to over-exaggerate it, but it's down and back a bit. Now that also helps you to project your chest a bit more, and combined with your tummy in, it also gives that a bit more of a feminine sort of appearance as well. Now there is a very simple test that we can do to practice all of those elements to make sure that we can get the best sort of posture possible. So let's move over to this simple little wall test. Right, let's just have a little look at this very simple wall test. So first of all, we need to make sure that we got our chin parallel and we got our shoulders back. So just roll them and drop them again, okay? Now what we need to do is to back up against the wall and make sure that our back of our heels about 2 to 4 inches away. Make sure that our shoulders are touching, because they should be back. Also our head is touching and our bottom or our buttocks are touching. Now if you take the flat part of your hand and push it into the small of your back, it should fit in quite easily. Nice sort of friction fit. Now if it's too much of a gap, you need to bring in a little bit of your tummy here. And if it's too small a gap, you need to make sure that your shoulders are rolled back a little bit more. So practice that. That way you can set your look or set your posture and then just walk away. So now we've got our posture correct, with our shoulders back, our tummies in, and our chins parallel to the floor. So now what we want to do is to see how we can walk in various heels. I'm going to be demonstrating two heights of heels. These are what I call our evening heels, which is sort of 4 to 6 inch heels, and everyday sort of flat type of shoes, because there are two distinctive techniques that we're going to be using. Now a couple of things of point worth mentioning here is that when men generally walk, they take a much greater gait or stride. Women take a much shorter stride pattern. And also the use of your arms is slightly different. You obviously swing your arms to keep a little bit of balance. Try and keep it when you're dressed relatively short and in coordination with your feet. So I'm going to show you those, but what we need to do is to work out the two sort of styles for the type of shoes and the height that we're wearing. So when we're wearing high heel stilettos, what we want to do is be able to walk in a straight line. So to practice with, I would find a relatively, like a floorboard that's straight or a very straight line. And what we're going to be trying to do is to put one foot down, move the other one around and in front. So it's around and in front and around and in front. And we don't need to do all these wibbly wobbly bits with our bottoms because that's overly exaggerating. We'll be bringing attention to ourselves, particularly if it looks very unnatural. So first couple of tips are obviously get your posture right, and then we can move on to taking those first tentative steps. So let's have a look and see how that's done. So that's a quick look at walking in relatively high heels, and you only get better by practice, practice, practice. So that's the higher heels. Now when it comes to wearing what I would call everyday casual or flat shoes, so something like pumps or training shoes, we change the walking style slightly. We put side by side, so we're going like this. Not wide like men's, size, it's sort of hip width at the most, and we just take smaller steps. So let's have a little look at that. So let's have a little look about standing a little bit more femininely. Now this is a typical sort of guy, sort of wide stance, trying to make ourselves look as big and as masculine as possible. Now what we need to do to try and get a more confident female look really is to bring our legs in a little bit closer to roughly the width of one's hips. And we can take a little bit of the weight, if you wish, off and relax a little bit at the knees. So that's sort of projecting a strong but confident female look. But I think the more, how would I say, feminine look would be by putting your foot forward slightly, and then your other leg, in my case the right leg, I'm going to tuck it behind and put the ball of my front foot in the centre section like this. So I'm kind of twisted a little bit like this. And then I'm going to bring my knees in a little bit. And this is a sort of stance I would use if I was taking photographs. People in a group, it makes you look taller, slender, and a lot more feline in shape, in my opinion. So if we look at this one here against the width, and then go back to the more confident or more female confident sort of stand here, you can see there's a lot more width in the hips between the two arrangements here. I prefer this one when I'm talking to people, or I will actually stand forward and cross my legs a little bit and try and put my hands on my hips like this, just to occupy my hands. Either one of those techniques you will find quite useful when you're standing. So let's have a look at the sort of etiquettes, if you want to, sitting down. Now there are no hard and fast rules, but there are a couple of techniques and things that I think I've always found useful over the years. And one of them is, first of all, when you sit down, try not to occupy all of the seat. What I mean by that is, when we're in guy mode, we have a tendency when we find a big comfy seat to lay all the way back and occupy all the space. Now as a girlie, what I have a tendency to do is, when I sit down, is to use the front part of the seat, making sure I've got my posture correct, my chin, my shoulders back, my tummy still tucked in. I will then take my hands like so, cross them over and put them onto my knees. like so. So it's sort of called more of a demure. This sort of look here, the technique I'm using here, is one that's adopted generally by the Queen. She puts her knees together, her ankles together, and she's firmly anchored to the ground. Now, there's a couple of things you've got, other techniques you can use. One of them is called a Duchess slant, and that is where we've still got our ankles together and our knees together, but what we do is we kind of slant them to one side or the other. You can drop your hands down a little bit, so we can either, to this side, or if you prefer, across to this side here. So that's another sort of slanted sort of technique there. Then you have sort of the Cambridge cross, and that's really where we actually put our legs crossed underneath between us and our legs together, so we're locking everything here. So it doesn't matter how short a skirt you're wearing, you can't see anywhere and you don't give away any immodesty. Now, one that's becoming a little bit sort of back into vogue, if that's the right term, was one that was mainly associated with Lady Diana, but Meghan Markle has sort of adopted it a bit more, been photographed with it, and that's becoming sort of known as the Sussex sort of slant, I suppose, and that's where she will cross the legs over like so, but also elongate them out. So this gives us a great long body here, and I put my hands on my knees like this, so I've got my legs well protected and close together, and I've got a nice line down my leg. Now you can do that either way you wish, to the left or to the right. I feel slightly more comfortable in having it in this particular direction, and it's quite a nice sort of elegant look to it because the lines are sweeping quite freely. So that's a little bit of a way at how to sit down. I mean, if you've got arms like I've got here, you can use those to get up, but generally when you're getting up, knees together, legs together, and just gently go upwards. And also, if you are having a dinner date, what I always recommend is, you need to keep eye contact. So what you can do is stand up, and then you can slowly move back to your seat. Once the back of your calves touch, then you can go down. So those are tiny little techniques with sitting down. I hope you found that of interest. Now what I want to do is just one little thing extra. We've covered the poise and our posture, we've covered how to walk, we've covered how to sit, and we've sort of covered most of the areas. One last little thing will be what happens when you drop something. And I know it's a little bit of a silly question because you've got to pick it up, but how you pick it up is important. So let's have a little look at that. Okay, when it comes to picking up things, we're not talking about great big heavy boxes, etc. It's just those silly little things that we drop from time to time, like our car keys. So let me just demonstrate something here. So if I do happen to drop the keys, silly me, the thing to avoid obviously is bending down. This is very unfeminine. So what I do is I generally walk up to the side of them and I will just drop my knees and pick it straight up. So I know it's a very small little thing, but it's attention to detail that makes all the difference. So all that really remains for me to say is thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you found the whole thing of interest. I hope you've subscribed if you haven't done it already. And as always, we'd like to receive your comments. If there's any aspects in this video or anything else you would like us to sort of take any video shots of or topics to cover, please just drop a note down below in the comments, and as always, please stay gorgeous.